Hello everyone, and welcome to another Cut Rate Commander Precon Upgrade Guide, the series where we take a look at Precon decks and bring them up to cut rate standards. My name is Grazzet, and today we'll be looking at the Food and Fellowship Precon from Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth and its face commanders, the partner pairing of Frodo Adventurous Hobbit and Sam Loyal Attendant, which we'll be bringing up from its roughly $40 price point to an increased budget of $75 after upgrades. But before we continue, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this content and would like me to continue making more videos like this in the future. And if you're feeling particularly generous, please consider buying me a coffee at the link in the description to keep me caffeinated as I work on more of these builds. Also, be sure to stick around until the end of the video to see which Precon upgrade we'll be covering next. So with that out of the way, let's start by taking a look at the commander and playstyle. The first of our partner pairing, Frodo Adventurous Hobbit, is a 1/3 halfling scout with vigilance and partner with Sam Loyal Attendant that costs a white and a black and has the following ability. Whenever he attacks, if we've gained 3 or more life that turn, the ring tempts us. Then, if Frodo's our ring bearer and the ring has tempted us 2+ times this game, we draw a card. Then our second commander, Sam Loyal Attendant, is a 2/4 halfling peasant with partner with Frodo Adventurous Hobbit that costs 1 a green and a white and has the following abilities. Firstly, at the beginning of combat on our turn, we create a food token. And secondly, the activated abilities of food we control cost 1 less to activate. Breaking down their core stats, both our commanders are sporting relatively low-to-the-ground CMCs, low power and high toughness stat blocks for their costs, and abilities that, when combined, aims to use food and the life gain it provides to gain us the benefits provided by the ring tempting us and drawing us cards while doing so. Taking a closer look at Sam first, since he is the simpler of our two commanders, he serves as both a steady supply of food tokens and a passive 50% mana discount to crack them for life gain, which admittedly may not seem that impressive at first glance, but, just like in the novels, it does make Sam the perfect partner for Frodo, enabling him every turn and doing so at a discount without us having to rely on any other types of life gain to do so. Speaking of which, Frodo takes the life gain Sam provides and turns it into value as the ring tempts us, gaining Skulk immediately the first time he swings in and becomes our ring bearer to make blocking him tricky considering his low power high toughness stat block, and then drawing us a card on subsequent attacks off of his own effect while proccing the loot effect, sack-based removal, and AoE life loss that the ring provides, suitably making Frodo a near perfect ring bearer that can take advantage of all its effects as he swings in turn after turn, provided we keep the life gain flowing. So, as we can see, Sam and Frodo are a commander pairing that use life gain, which they generate through food token creation, to provide value in the form of card advantage and the ring's effects, which immediately positions them to be a very effective Abzan life gain focused partner pairing, and the core build does an incredibly effective job at reflecting that, including plenty of additional food token generators to supplement our commanders, and a large number of payoffs that take advantage of the life gain food provides or even the food tokens themselves to generate us value, convert it into damage, generate us board presence, and even power up our board, which combined with the deck's high value reprints and spectacular land base, makes the base build very playable right out of the box. Still, despite the build being incredibly solid out of the gate, there is some room for improvement, ranging from adding some additional sources of food token creation to fuel a primary game plan, including additional ways to take advantage of our food tokens and the life gain they provide to generate us even more value and damage, and just giving the deck some general quality of life changes by shoring up its low amount of targeted removal and upgrading the quality of its other core stat pieces to help improve its performance, thereby elevating this already very good Precon into a powerhouse that can beat our opponents before second breakfast. So let us make our way to Middle-earth and join the brave pair of hobbits Sam and Frodo as they embark on their epic quest to destroy the One Ring in the fires of Mount Doom. One the ring bearer, tasked with the burden of carrying the artifact that would doom their world while resisting its corrupting influence, and the other his loyal and stalwart companion, entrusted to protect him and ease his friend's burden during their quest. And while the road ahead would be arduous and fraught with danger, these hobbits, so long as they work together, may just have what it takes to save Middle-earth. So, now that we have a better understanding of the commanders and playstyle, let's take a look at the cards we'll be keeping from the base build. Starting off with the creatures that we'll be keeping from the core build, we'll begin with retaining the best fruit-producing creatures the build has to offer to keep the life gain and food token-focused game plan running smoothly. As such, we'll be holding on to the repeatable sources of food production included in the base build, such as Gilded Goose, who provides both repeatable food production to fuel our game plan as well as the ability to turn our food into ramp to speed up and fix our mana base, Savvy Hunter, which again gives us continual food production, this time via its on attack and block trigger, while also allowing us to turn our food into card advantage to help replenish our hands at no mana cost, Rapacious Guest, whose on-damage food production synergizes well with Frodo once he gets Skulk to tack on food production every time he swings in on top of his own and the ring's other effects, while also growing larger as we crack our food and inflicting some decent burn if they're removed, and a Tireless Provisioner, which tacks on either food production to our land drops if we need the tokens or life gain, or treasure instead if we'd rather have the ramp. The first half of our alternate commander pairing, Pippin Warden of Isengard, will then also be retaining his spot in this category, serving as both a repeatable source of food production and a food payoff via his AoE pump effect that turns our numerous but typically low power creature base into beatsticks to crack in with, in addition to tutoring up Merry when he comes down to technically cantrip as well. Then from there, we'll also be hanging on to a suite of one-time food-producing creatures from the base build that also bring additional utility, such as Farmer Cotton, whose scalable food production and 1/1 token creation both helps us get more food into play while simultaneously building up our board state, Rosie Cotton of South Lane, who not only creates a food when she ETBs, but also weaponizes that food and all our subsequent food generation by loading up our creatures with +1/+1 counters as we create them, and Treebeard Gracious Host, who, like the previous entry, nets us more food as he ETBs and then takes advantage of our life gain to either power himself up or any of our other treefolk and or halflings, the latter of which we have plenty in the final build. And with our food production covered, it's then time to move on to our kept creatures that take advantage of that food and or the life gain it provides to further our game plan, leading off with Banquet Guests, whose variable cost and affinity for food allows it to come down as a massive trampling beatstick that we can protect by using food to make it indestructible, Feasting Hobbit, who allows us to funnel our food into another gigantic body that this time will be unblockable to get in for even more damage, Mirkwood Bats, which tacks on AoE life loss to our food as we create it and use it to continually drain the table, Prize Pig, which serves as a mana dork that takes advantage of our life gain to stockpile counters on itself that we can later use to get extra back-to-back uses out of it for even more ramp, and a Motivated Pony, who serves as another AoE pump effect that becomes considerably more powerful and grants pseudo-vigilance when we create food to enable powerful alpha strikes. Gollum Obsessive Stalker and Lobelia Defender of Bag End then both make the cut as legendary life gain and food token payoffs respectively, with Gollum turning all the life gain we accumulate on our turn into life loss for our opponents, and Lobelia letting us sack away our food tokens to inflict life loss to our opponents while still padding our life totals, or, alternatively, to play any card she exiles off our opponent's decks when she ETBs at no mana cost. We'll then close out our retained food payoffs with 3 more legendary entries, the Gaffer, Gwahir Greatest of the Eagles, and Merry Warden of Isengard. The first allowing us to drop to 4 cards per rotation as long as we have the food tokens to crack, the second generating us additional evasive board presence that also grants evasion to our other creatures as we gain life each turn, and the third building up our board state even further with 1/1 lifelinkers as we create food tokens while also tutoring up Pippin when he comes down, who can then power up the board his cousin creates so we can crack in with it. Then with the primary game plan covered, we'll move on to some additional life-gaining creatures outside of food that we'll be holding on to from the core build, those being Essence Warden, who helps pad our life totals and proc our life gain payoffs as both our and our opponent's creatures enter play, Prosperous Innkeeper, which only gains us life as our creatures enter play but gives us a treasure to help compensate, and Bilbo Birthday Celebrant, who passively empowers all our other life gain sources, and, on the off chance we can accumulate the insane amount of life necessary, we can use to cheat our entire creature base from our deck directly onto the battlefield. And lastly, to wrap up our creature holdovers, we'll be holding on to Birds of Paradise, which provides excellent ramp and fixing for only a single mana, Shire Sheriff, who serves as a passable on-theme O-ring effect to deal with troublesome creatures, and Mentor of the Meek, who takes advantage of the majority of our creatures having low power to generate us cheap and repeatable card advantage. Then moving on to our instant carryovers, we'll be primarily focused on keeping the best sources of removal included in the base build to help shore up our core stats, with Swords to Plowshares, Go for the Throat, and Anguished Unmaking all retaining their positions as fantastic spot removal in our colors to deal with all manner of our opponent's threats. And then as our last retained instant, we have Crypt Incursion, which serves as a flash speed silver bullet against graveyard-focused builds that also gains us a substantial amount of life back in the process depending on how full the graveyard we target is. It's then on to our sorcery holdovers, which will consist of core stat entries all the way down, with Farseek and Cultivate staying in as solid sources of land-based ramp to help speed up and fix our mana base, Night's Whisper holding on to its spot as a cheap and efficient draw source in our colors, and the Wipes Toxic Deluge and Dust to Dawn retaining their positions as well, as means for us to retake control of the board that take advantage of our life gain and the large amount of low-power creatures we're running respectively. From there, it's on to our kept enchantments, which will mostly consist of life gain payoffs, those being Dawn of Hope, which turns our life gain into card advantage while also being a source of life gain itself through its 1/1 life-linking token creation, Assemble the Entmoot, whose instant speed token creation that scales with our life gain allows us to create a trio of massive tokens on our opponent's turns to either use as surprise blockers or to swing in with when the turn gets back to us, and Sanguine Bond, which serves as another way for us to turn our life gain into life loss for our opponents to soften up their life totals even more. Of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit then concludes our held over enchantments, initially providing us with additional food token generation alongside a small bit of utility in the form of +1/+1 counter distribution and draw, and culminating with a food payoff that can flood our board with bodies if we've been stockpiling food tokens, which in this build we can do quite easily. We then arrive to our preserved artifacts, in which of course Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and Chromatic Lantern will be staying in as excellent mana rocks that can speed up and or fix our mana base very efficiently. Well of Lost Dreams retains its position as a life gain matters payoff that can turn our life gain into 1-for-1 card advantage provided we have the mana to pump into it, and a field-tested Frying Pan keeps its spot as well as another life gain payoff that powers up whatever creature it's equipped to significantly as we crack our food or gain life through other means. And finally, reaching our land base, we'll start off with our retained mana lands, in which we'll be hanging on to Command Tower, Sandsteep Citadel, and Murmuring Bosque, all of which tap for all our colors to improve consistency, Path of Ancestry, which also taps for all our colors while taking advantage of the large number of halflings in our 99 to provide repeatable card selection, Exotic Orchard, which can generally tap for at least a few of our colors off our opponent's lands, the Check Lands, Isolated Chapel, Sunpetal Grove, and Woodland Cemetery, the Reveal Lands, Fortified Village, Necroblossom Snarl, and Shine Shadow Snarl, and the Battleland Canopy Vista, all of which tap for 2 out of 3 of our colors while generally coming into play untapped thanks to our decent number of basics, the Painland Brushland to give us even more untapped fixing that our life gain helps take the edge off, and lastly, the Bicycle Land Scattered Groves, whose basic land types makes it fetchable by our non-basic land ramp sources to further improve consistency. Then for our kept utility lands, we'll be holding on to Access Tunnel and Rogue's Passage as additional means to ensure that Frodo or any of our other ring bearers can safely get in for damage if the skulk provided by the ring doesn't cut it, and Ghost Quarter will be hanging on to its spot as well as a way for us to deal with any problematic utility lands our opponents are running. And finally, we'll be keeping the 4 plains, 4 swamps, and 8 forests from the base build as our basics to round out our mana base. That leaves us with a final tally of 77 cards, including basic lands that we'll be keeping from the base build, leaving us with a surprisingly small 23 cards to replace, which is a testament to how synergistic this deck is right out of the box. So, now that we've covered all the cards that made the cut from the core build, let's move on to our upgrades. Beginning with our new creature additions, we'll start off by replacing some of our less efficient food generators and top-end creatures with additional ways for us to consistently generate food tokens, with the one-time food generator Generous being replaced with Meridoc Brandybuck, who hits the board much earlier and takes advantage of Frodo being our ring bearer to generate us food every time he attacks, Orchard Strider's ETB food generation being swapped out for Samwise Gamgee, who again hits the board significantly faster and this time takes advantage of our wide creature base to generate food as they come into play, as well as letting us use our food to recur a huge amount of historic spells from the bin. Butterbur Bree Innkeeper's conditional food production being cut for the more consistent food generating legend Guillaume Master Chef, who, like the previous entry, synergizes very well with our large creature base to create food for us and allows us to use our food to protect our board via his indestructibility granting. Eagle of the North's lackluster ETB Battlecry being sidelined in favor of Galadriel Giftgiver, who can provide food generation on ETB and attack, or can instead be used to power up our creatures or ramp us if we have enough food tokens in play already, and Landroval Horizon Witness, who is a decent source of evasion granting but a bit too pricey for what he does, being slotted out to make room for Peregrine Took, who passively increases our food production with his mere presence on the battlefield, and gives us an additional way to turn our food tokens into card advantage at no mana cost. Then from there, we'll be adding in some additional ways for us to take advantage and weaponize our food token generation and the life gain it provides us with Revive the Shire's Recursion losing its spot to Eleanor Gardner, who still provides us with a food token and allows us to turn the food we use into a free rampant growth a turn to grow our mana base, Sylvan offering symmetrical token creation being swapped out for the more one-sided Academy Manufactor, who tacks on ramp and draw to our food generation by creating treasures and clues alongside it, the slow fetch Evolving Wilds losing its spot to Vito Thorn of the Dusk Rose to give us another copy of Sanguine Bond on legs to turn our life gain into life drain, who also gives us the option to turn our entire board into life linkers when we alpha strike in with them for even more damage, and Woodfall Primus' powerful but out of place removal effect being slotted out for Braid's Arisen Nightmare, who can continually sack our food tokens to either force our opponents to sack their artifacts or give us card advantage while they take damage, with us being fine with either result. And lastly, to close out our creature upgrades, we'll be cutting the middling AoE pump effects Great Oak Guardian and Call for Unity for the superior AoE pump effects of Blossoming Bogbeast and Nykthos Paragon, both of which take advantage of the life gain our food provides to either grant our entire board at least a +5/+5 stat bump and trample as they swing in by cracking a single food, or by permanently growing our entire board with 3 +1/+1 counters on each player's turn whenever we crack a food instead, making them both superb ways to turn our numerous but low power creatures into gigantic beatsticks to swing in with. It's then on to our instant upgrades, in which we'll be focusing all our efforts into improving the base build's removal suite, with the Gainland's Greypelt Refuge and Scoured Barrens, the spare board wipe Fumigate, and the decent removal spell Mortify all being exchanged out for Path to Exile, Generous Gift, Beast Within, and Mortality Spear, which brings up our targeted removal numbers to more acceptable levels and helps us efficiently deal with a wide variety of threats. Similarly, our sorcery upgrades also consist entirely of core stat improvements, with the generic Mana Rock Commander Sphere and the incidental Life Gain Rock Pristine Talisman being replaced with Rampant Growth and Nature's Lore, both of which we can cast earlier, still provide superb ramp and fixing, and are much less susceptible to removal, and the Small Creatures Matter board wipe, Fell the Mighty, being exchanged out for the more on-theme board wipe, the Battle of Bywater, which still dodges the vast majority of our creature base while leveling most other boards, and provides us with a huge amount of food after the dust settles to continue fueling our game plan. It's then on to even more quality of life upgrades as we reach our new enchantments, in which our singular change will be cutting the decent but generic draw spell Harmonize for the more game plan oriented Trail of Crumbs, which adds a pseudo scry and draw effect to our food whenever we crack it for any reason, and whose downside of being limited to only hitting permanents not bothering us too much since we're only running 16 non-permanents in the deck. And then reaching the last of our new spell additions, our artifact upgrades will improve our core stats even further by swapping out the decent trading post for the even cheaper Idol of Oblivion, which still provides the once per turn draw of its predecessor, with the upside of not costing us any mana or food to use, and the bit too group huggy Hythlian Rope being scrapped to make room for Bolus's Citadel, which transforms our life gain into value by turning it into repeatable draw and free spells off the top of our deck, and also weaponizes our food tokens by converting them into massive AoE damage to help soften up and or finish off our opponents. And finally, reaching our land upgrades, we'll be exchanging out the cycling land Ash Barrens for the Painland Llanowar Wastes to give us a bit more fixing that doesn't require mana to use, and Shire Terrace will be terraformed into just the Shire, which will usually come into play untapped thanks to our large amount of legendary creatures, and provides additional food token generation from our land slot as well. So, now that we've covered all 23 cards we've upgraded from the core build, let's take a look at the breakdown for this Precon upgrade. This deck currently has 37 creatures including our commanders, 8 instants, 8 sorceries, 5 enchantments, 9 artifacts, 0 planeswalkers, and 35 lands. Looking at the stats that matter to our game plan, we have 21 sources of food tokens, 20 cards that care about food tokens, 26 cards that gain us life through food production or otherwise, 12 cards that care about life gain, 8 cards that turn our food or life gain into damage, and 11 cards that turn our food or life gain into individual or AoE stat increases, giving us plenty of food production and life gain sources to help fuel the deck's primary game plan and a decent number of payoffs for both, mostly consisting of ways to turn them into damage or to help grow our board. For general deck stats, we have 14 ramp sources, 13 card draw sources, 10 targeted removal sources, and 3 board wipes, leaving only our draw sources being slightly higher than normal, as we'll need them to replenish our hands quickly since the average CMC of our spells is between 2 and 3. Looking at our mana curve, we have 5 1-drops, 21 2-drops, 24 3-drops, 7 4-drops, 5 5-drops, 2 6-drops, and 1 7-drop, leaving us with a low-to-the-ground curve that aims to get Sam and Frodo on board as quickly as possible to begin generating us value, both through Frodo's effect as we make him our ring bearer and through the effects of the ring itself, allowing us to continually dig through our deck for more and more sources of food and life gain, ways to generate additional value off of them, and eventually ways to weaponize them to finish off our opponents. The final price of this build then comes out to be $75.14 after upgrades. This price does not include tax or shipping and assumes that the price you paid for the Precon was $40. The price of the cards was calculated by using the cheapest listed marketplace price on TCG Player at the time of this recording. For side grades, we can consider trading out Trail of Crumbs in favor of Killer Service, which gives us more food up front and allows us to convert it into board presence, though it does reduce our card advantage, and Braid's Arisen Nightmare can be swapped out for Jaheira, Friend of the Forest, who turns our food tokens into mana rocks to give us a huge amount of ramp, but at the cost of reducing our draw, removal, and damage output. Then for further upgrades, Bilbo Birthday Celebrant can be swapped out for Alhamrit's Archive, which passively doubles the life gain we get from cracking food and the draw we get off Frodo as well as all our other sources. Prosperous Innkeeper can be sidelined for Rudolph Duskbringer, who serves as another life gain payoff that can reanimate our creatures from the bin every turn while protecting himself from removal as we gain life. Mentor of the Meek can be cut in favor of Benny Brack's Zoologist, who can draw us up to 4 cards per rotation so long as we keep creating food at no mana cost. And Motivated Pony can be cut to make room for Archangel of Thune, who permanently grows our entire board by +3/+3 for every food token we crack. And lastly, since we are a token deck, we can slot out Assemble the Entmoot and Galadriel Giftgiver to slot in Parallel Lives and Anointed Procession, both of which passively double our food production with their mere presence on the battlefield, just as they passively double the cost of our deck with their mere presence in our 99. Thanks everyone for sticking around until the end of the video. With the Food and Fellowship Precon upgrade complete, the next deck we'll be covering will be the Riders of Rohan Precon and its face commander, Eowyn Shield Maiden, so look forward to a human tribal build featuring her coming soon. And lastly, before we close out, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, as this channel can't continue to grow without your support. And if you feel like showing your thanks by keeping me caffeinated while I make these videos, please consider buying me a coffee at the link in the description. And if any of you would like to support the channel in a different way, feel free to check out the other deck techs floating around my head if you'd like to see the latest builds, or click on the link above for a playlist of all the Cut Rate Commander episodes I've made so far. And with that, have a good one, folks, and stay safe.